Hello, welcome to another episode of Unlocked. Today we are going to talk to Mitch Simon, and he is I don't know, I'm just gonna let you find out on this show. It's really fun, kind of the way we've set this thing up based on his own experience in improv. And yeah, you don't meet people every day that also, that do executive coaching and also do improv. I don't know, maybe you do. I don't. But I think that that's really fascinating how we set up this interview and how we proceeded throughout the interview. He's worked with companies for over 20 years, companies like Sony Playstation, Cushman Wakefield, Host Healthcare, Centura Wealth Advisory. He has his own podcast called Team Anywhere, and he is frequently at the National Comedy Theater in San Diego. So if you want to go see Mitch do improv, I guess you can go to that theater as well. Anyway, in this interview, we are going to set up improv and what I guess improv and the alignment that it has with teams and the way that that shapes how we communicate. There's some really cool principles you're going to get out of that. And then we talk about some of the things that are holding teams back from achieving their potential. So I'm excited for you to hear this and to get kind of glean your own insights from what improv brings to leadership. So here we go. First of all, please tell me, I gotta get this out of the way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the improv thing. Let's talk about comedy clubs. And I don't talk to people every day that do this. What's up with that? Where'd that come?
Yeah. So there's like two-part history. When I first decided to go out on my own, everyone said, well, if you're going to go out on your own, you can be a consultant, you need to learn improv. And I'm thinking, well, sure, I'll do anything, but I don't know what it is. And then I started like a very small, intro to improv. Then about 15 years later, I was, for some reason, I went back to an improv show, and they were going to teach classes, and the classes were particularly to teach you to do improv on the stage. And for the listeners who don't know, improv is not stand-up comedy where you say the same thing over and over. Improv is where you have a team of people on stage and you get a suggestion and you basically put a scene together with connected to that word. So if you say tuna fish sandwich, then we might do a whole scene based on something has to do with the tuna fish sandwich. So I started to take these classes. After the third round of classes, we were allowed to try out to be on stage, and I was able. I'm good, not great, but I'm good, and so I was able to join the lower ranks of the improv company. So I've been on stage doing improv for about 7 or 8 years, minus a couple because of COVID. What improv does from let's say a leadership perspective is it teaches you, of course, how to be present and how to listen. And true improv, the reason why improv is usually very, very funny is because people are on stage responding authentically to whatever occurs on stage, which is the greatest leadership lesson. And the other greatest leadership lesson and personal lesson is when you spend so much time rehearsing and when you spend so much time performing to whatever comes your way, hey, let's use this tuna fish sandwich as a spaceship. Okay, sure. Which would be a horrible scene, by the way. But we learn to go with it. So we learn to go with anything in life, and life sometimes is very, very challenging, and clients sometimes are very, very challenging, and teams sometimes are very, very challenging. And what improv teaches you to do is to go with whatever shows up and be fluid. So there was one time I remember when I was leading a strategy team, and it was either a 3, 5, or 7 hour strategy team meeting. And at the last minute, the person running this team basically said, "Hey, Mitch, that was a complete waste of time." And here I am, and I had prepared days and months for this thing, and I just went with it and said, "Okay, let's say his name was Scott. Say, hey, thank you, Scott. What could we do better next time then?" And so it was just fluid. And so almost like things just kind of bounce off me very easily now. And also when, hey, Mitch, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you offer this? The answer is always yes. And I find a way how to do it. So that's kind of the improv way of life, the improv lesson. And the other thing is, it's just I have a lot of fun with it, because just imagine being around other humans who are open to anything happening. There's no blaming. There's no, it's your responsibility. When a scene is lousy, it's completely your fault. You didn't respond well to what I say in improv is to make your partner look good. Because the whole secret to improv is when you're on stage and nobody knows what's going to go on, all you focus on is making everyone else on stage look great. And as long as you're doing that and you're getting out of your head, which is an important part of life and being in business, if all I know is I just need to make you look good, and I know that you're going to make me look good, then everything is just really, really fluid. So there's just so many elements to it I love. And I think improv is like the practice of being a good human. And you take it off stage and you bring it into the rest of your life. It's great for relationships, because if you get home and the person that you're living with, hanging out with, says, hey, here I have a complaint. You're like, okay, sure, bring it on. As opposed to defending and going, but what about this? What about this? Now everything is like, yes, bring it on.
Wow. I never thought about that with the improv thing. I didn't even know where this improv question was going to go, but you just kind of flowed with it right into the idea of why is this so important? I mean, would you even throw this out as a exercise? Do you do this with your clients? Do you do any improv stuff with your clients?
I do a lot of improv stuff with my clients. We always start whatever we do, a big, heavy, serious strategy session with zip, zap, zop, which is a little game where you just, point fingers and everyone zip, zap, zop, zip, zap, zop. People hate it. They love it, because it really unleashes, it makes a connection. And then I've adapted some of the games. Like we'll have one of my best games is, I would say, hey, Skot, I'm going to make a movie and it's starring you. So I want to know, I'm you. I want to know, when I was about 17, Skot, what was I thinking? Like, what was I really going through? And then you would say, well, you were thinking this. You're actually upset about a girl that left you. And you were trying to find yourself. Oh, okay. And then it's just like, it prompts me to go, oh, okay. I was trying to find myself. What were some of my big dilemmas? And then you would say, well, and so basically what you're doing is you're telling me your life in a way that creates a lot of intimacy, creates a lot of knowing, creates a lot of interest. And it's just a little flip of something. And usually when you play these like little tiny vignettes, you'll remember those sessions like years after. It's like, oh yes, got to remember when we were talking and you were telling me about when you were 17. So we'll play those games. And then I'll just adapt games from the stage that will help people with listening. Let's say there's one game that I'll practice without going into it, where I'm really focused on listening. Are you really listening to your partner? And it's not kitschy. It's actually real. It's because there are times when managers or people on a team say they're listening, but they're not listening. And so with some of these games, we can demonstrate how to really listen fully.
I love that. I love that whole idea. Yeah. I've gotten into this idea where it's like, hey man, I wish I should probably, I want to do some improv stuff, and then I'm always like, and then I get this self-preservation thing. It's like, well, what if I sound stupid and I don't look as good as this person? Yeah. And there's all that creeps in to my own psyche. And
yeah,
so
I tell people, so go to a beginning improv class, because first of all, change your life. Like, oh, I'm afraid. It's like, listen, everyone who goes to a beginning improv class, it's because they suck at it. They don't know anything about. Everybody there doesn't know anything. It's just the perfect place to play. Nobody's watching, and you just start. The thing about improv is you start to discover in yourself where you stop yourself from connecting to other people. You discover in yourself where you're trying to be funny. When you try to be funny in improv, you're not funny. When you try to respond authentically, it's funny. So it's just.
What's the leadership principle there?
Well, obviously, leaders listen. Leaders, there's a couple things that I learned in my, travails here is, true leaders connect. I'm working with a company right now and you can just see, well, how's your new CEO? We love her. Why? Because she's a human. So the principle is, leaders listen, which you must do in improv. The next thing that comes out of the other person's mouth, you're going to use that. If you don't use that, dead scene. If you use it, you look brilliant. So that's kind of the leadership lesson there. And then just true connection is to, there's like a simple game where I just discovered another game where what would happen would be that I would say a sentence and then you would say the last word of the
sentence.
And then you would move on. So the thing is like, I cannot pretend like I'm trying to be intelligent because all I'm doing is I'm listening to you. Another game where we would, this goes back a couple of years, is whenever I would end a sentence, you would pick up with the word that starts with the last letter of that sentence. So if I say, hey, pick up some meatloaf, you would say, fine, I'll do that. And then I would say, terrific. And you'd say, cool. So it'd be like you're using the last letter for the first letter.
That's a lot of.
And
that
so
makes my brain hurt.
Really,
it almost made my brain hurt.
Yeah, it's good. It's fun.
It's good.
Are we talking about improv today?
Yeah, no,
maybe we are. I don't know.
I love this. Because the idea of what we can gather from this, and I think that people just think of improv on the surface, which a lot of us do. We look at the surface level stuff, whether it's leaders looking at surface level problems and then just fixing the thing, just looking at it as a surface level without getting deep into what is this really doing for us. And I think that that's kind of what we're talking about here, right? You look at improv, and I didn't intend for it to go this way, but we're just improv and about improv. So I think that if we take the idea of like what improv is, but look at the deeper principles behind it, what are we learning with this is listening, connection, collaboration, feeding off one another to, it's not about me looking smart. It's about how do I respond, not necessarily react, but respond thoughtfully about the thing that's going on in front of me right now. I love that we've set this up with the improv thing, because I think that as we get into talking about listening, collaboration, supporting everyone, you could write a whole book, I guess, on the way improv and leadership really work together, because I think those fundamental things are important. And I think it's going to transition us into this idea of, okay, so what's holding teams back? So what's holding me back from doing improv is my own self-preservation, my own fear of this or fear of that. But there's other things. So that can hold teams back as well from engaging, supporting each other, from listening. There's all kinds of things that it will hold them back from. What are some other things that you feel are holding people back from achieving their potential, whether it's a team or an individual? So we talked about it from improv, but let's go to the team level and personal level.
All right, Scott. So what I've found hold a lot of people back is they're waiting on somebody else. They almost think that it's, and this comes from, decades of bad management. It's not my duty. It's not my obligation. It's not my responsibility when a team is not working. It's actually somebody else's responsibility. So let's say, Scott, we're on a team and you are just saying bad things to other people on the team. I look at my team member, and my team member's not saying anything. So I'm just observing, and I'm thinking, well, then it's not my place to say anything. It's not my place. Now, so what's happening is you're on the team, you're creating a bad experience, and I'm just looking around for the person who's in charge to do something about it. In many cases, the manager's not a great manager, in many cases. During the pandemic, many of the companies that I worked with grew exponentially, and people were promoted left and right. Some of those promotions were incredible humans, and some of those promotions were they just weren't ready yet. And so if you're on a team and you have a manager that's not ready, you suffer. And so you think that someone else needs to say something. I know that there's a psychological study they did once where they put one person in a room, and all of a sudden someone screamed outside the door. When there was one person in the room and someone screamed outside the door, what happened was that person got up and opened the door and saw what was going on. Then they did it again, and they had like a stunt double or whatever. They had two people in the room. One of them was part of the survey. And so there's the guy who's part of the survey. Then there's the guy who doesn't know what's going on. The woman screams outside of the room. The guy who's part of the survey doesn't do anything. And the other person kind of looks at him and says, "Oh, I guess I'm not supposed to do anything," and doesn't go outside the room. So we're very much a product of the influence of what's going on around us. Now, if you come in and you say, "You know what? Gosh darn it. Most of my life is on a team, whether I'm in person or whether I'm, in Vermont." And you come from the other place we're talking about, which is, I want to come from a place where everyone around me is having a good time. Then you come into two things that you're missing. One is a lot of people don't really know how to connect to what they're feeling or what they're sensing. And a lot of people don't know what to look for when something's off. So for instance, we come into the meeting and it's just dry. Let's say it's a Monday. We all had tough weekends. We might not even talk about it. There's just no energy in the meeting. For a lot of us, it doesn't even occur that there should be energy in the meeting. For some of us, it does occur that there should be energy in the meeting, but we're not really saying anything. So what we want to do is we want to say, "Hey," this we do in the beginning of our course, you're responsible for your team having energy. You're responsible for your team being open and transparent. So what's missing is ownership. If I walk in and I wake up and I'm saying, like, I own my own experience, I own the success of this team, even though I'm not the manager, then things would come out of my mouth that are a little bit different. So if I'm in the meeting and you're saying negative things, you know what? I don't know if what you're saying impacts other people the same way as it does. I just know that you're saying things. So what I could do is I could say, "Hey, Scott, you're saying things and I'm kind of feeling a little bit upset. What's up with that?" I didn't say you're bad. I didn't say you're making me upset. I just said you're saying things and I'm feeling upset. What's up with that? And then that can open up a conversation with the team. Or, "Scott, you promised that you were going to get this thing done. And on Monday, it's Monday morning. So Scott, did you get it done?" "No, I didn't." "Okay. So I don't know. I remember that, a lot of us made a lot of promises over the weekend to get things done, and we didn't get these things done. What's up with that?" You're just taking responsibility for sensing what's missing and saying what's missing without interpreting anything. As soon as you say, "Hey team, Scott's really lazy," it's over, because I've basically, told you who you are, but I don't know. You might not have got something done because, God forbid, there was a tragedy in your family over the weekend. I don't know. We might not have got something done because we're all really upset with what's going on in the company right now. So what's really missing, I think, is the sensing and the ownership for the success of what we're doing here with our lives at this time. And being able to speak it in a certain way where it's not offensive. And that usually comes down to, what is it? It's kind of like, I always go back to the Monty Python movie where, they slice off the arms and the legs, just all comedy. And, it's like, fight, fight, fight. It's like, but I just cut your arm off. It's like, oh no, it's just a flesh wound.
It's a flesh wound. Yeah.
For a lot of it's very uncomfortable and we don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh no, I'm fine. You hate this. Yeah, I hate this team, but let's just go. No, it's speak like, hey, I'm not enjoying my time here. What's up with that?
So I think what I hear you saying is, and this is a common phrase I'll say, is moving from critique to curiosity. And how do we take ownership of our own thing, not make too many assumptions, and ask those questions? Because what I hear you saying in your actual communication is, number one, you're stating the obvious. You're stating a circumstance. It's a neutral thing.
Correct.
It's not good or bad. There's no emotion associated with it until you put emotion with it. And stating that somebody didn't get something done over the weekend isn't good or bad. Well, in certain circumstances, maybe it is, but it's just what it is. Until you start to say things like that, I feel, disappointed, or I feel let down that those types of things are happening. What's up with that? Right? Like, how can we resolve this in the future? How can we do something more? Like, associating the thing that happened, explaining how you feel about it, and then getting into what you want to do to make it better in the future.
Yeah.
Not just coming in and saying, dude, that thing was due over the weekend and you are constantly a problem here. Like,
yeah, exactly. And now where it goes back to improv, Skot, is in improv, when you state the obvious, it's funny. So if an improv and we're doing a scene and I call you Mark and another guy calls you Jim, if you go, yeah, some people call me Jim Mark, it's hilarious. All you did was state the obvious of what's going on. Skot didn't get his work done, and we're just continuing on with the meeting. Anyone see that? What's up with that? It's, it's so funny because it's just it's a little bit so easy. You just you just had COVID and you're back at work today. What's up with that? That's pretty much it. And so I think what's important is, what am I supposed to see or feel? You're supposed to actually feel energetic to be on a team. You're supposed to be transparent when you're on a team. You're supposed to be able to take some risks when you're on a team. We're not taking, we're not taking risks. What's up with that? What I've learned here is when I make a mistake, people jump all over me. What's up with that? Is that what we want? So there's a little courage involved. Got to say that.
Yes,
a lot of courage but it's so interesting that it requires courage to say just what's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
There's what's a company I'm working with is there's the last person that ran the show created a vision where there's no substance to the vision. Nobody said anything. This all goes back to, the king that had no clothes. That whole story about the king that had no clothes is, they play a trick on the king and they say we have the finest linens and there's really nothing there. And then they put him in the parade and it's only little 5-year-old that says, hey, mommy, the king has no clothes. It's the 5-year-old that's the bravest to just say what's obvious. Why are we at a place where people are so afraid to say what's obvious? We could go into a whole conversation like that. In today's political times, it's very hard to be brave, but it was hard to be brave 10 years ago. It was hard to be brave 50 years ago. It's hard to be brave 100 years ago. We're just looking for people to be courageous. So I do think that so it's kind of like, what would we do to really achieve our potential? Well, on our teams, we would share what's obvious and then have the courage to talk about it.
That's powerful. We have to create cultures in which people feel safe speaking. It's the culture you're creating, right? Is why people aren't speaking up in the first place or feeling brave enough to speak up. And I think that that's really crucial. So let's rounding this thing around, coming around the corner here. We're summing this thing up.
Sure.
The principles you've been talking about all kind of go back to this idea of improv and the things that we started with, on purpose, but kind of didn't know where it was going to go. Kind of
Sure.
put us on this path of understanding what improv and how leadership all really tie in together with team health and dynamics, and how do we play off one another about, those different elements you mentioned: listening, collaboration, being supportive of each other, but then a lot of this idea of ownership, taking ownership for your role in the dialogue is crucial in both spaces. And that's
when we start a scene. Yeah, when you start a scene, it's really great scenes are the person walks on stage and says, "Billy, Mom is pissed." That takes ownership. Versus, "Hey, what's up?" Right? So it really is funny scenes. Anything that's funny on stage means that there's a reality behind it, which is true. Playing small, not funny. Playing big, very funny. So, you're going to make a difference by making a difference.
That's great. That's great.
So going back to close this out, Scott, you're a little bit afraid to take an improv class. Just do it. Worst thing that happens is you learn something.
Well, and I get practice on these shows. It's not like these shows are scripted, so
that's true.
Every time we're having a discussion with somebody, we're kind of in an improv class, I guess, in some way, shape, or form. So I think that's an interesting lesson. Yeah. I guess I'm gonna have to think about that one a little bit. And
right, stop thinking about it and just do something about it, Scott.
That's right. I think I'm the only one. Yeah. Plurality, ignorance. I just got to move. Okay, thanks for coaching me through this, Mitch. I appreciate it. That's what all Scott. This was about. All right, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to find out more about what you're doing, you have some things in the works here. You speak. You've got your own show that you're doing as well to help empower people. Where do people find out about you? What's some information you want to give them to help them in their own journey?
Yeah, the easiest way is my website, simonalliance.com, simonalliance.com. The podcast I have is called team-anywhere.com. That will get you to simonalliance.com. And then on Instagram, we're at Team Coach Mitch. Team Coach Mitch. I think that's where we are on Instagram. And then we're on YouTube as well. We have a good staff that puts us out there. But Simon Alliance is really where you're going to reach me.
Okay. Very cool. I know you've got a lot of good stuff out there, and you've got some more coming down the pipe. So I'm excited to see what comes out there, and I'm excited to see what you do for the people out there and the way you do it. And I think that you have a unique spin on your own experience and how you can bring that to others. So I appreciate you bringing it to the show.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your show, Scott. We'll definitely stay in touch.
Okay, everybody, did you get that? There are some interesting tidbits I want to get out of this one, or I want you to pay attention to out of this one. Just there to help people perform great. So I always tell leaders, I've talked to some leaders, and they'll come to me and say, "Gosh, Scott, I just don't know what I feel like I don't have all the answers. I don't feel like when people come to me, I have to go to somebody else. And I think it undermines my credibility as a leader. And I feel like I have to have all the answers." And I say, your job is not to have all the answers. Your job is to get the answers and to remove roadblocks to enable other people to also find out their own answers. So there to help people perform great is your job. To give them a gift, to help them, to inform them and help them grow, to help them gather, to help them understand. Those are the things that you as leaders do. Now, improv, let's talk about those things. Listen. So we've got to listen in improv to understand how we need to respond. How many of us, if we just had an improv, if we were at an improv show and somebody's just like talking over the other person and you're like you don't even really know what's going on with the whole dialogue, not good improv. Okay. If there's no collaboration, not good improv. If there is no support of each other, if everybody's there for themselves, just to make themselves look funny or themselves to kind of not good improv. And if they don't take ownership or responsibility for their own role in the improv, not good improv. These key principles are so good. And I hope that you'll take them with you. Listen, collaborate, support, and own. Take those things with you. Have them be central in the way you lead and the way you communicate with your team. If you want to find out more about me, you can go to skotwaldron.com. You can like, share, subscribe on my YouTube channel. Please, you can find me on LinkedIn, do all those things. And find me on anywhere you listen to podcasts. I've got my show up there as well. So thanks for being here on another episode of Unlocked, and I'll see you next time.